wrong. See, my hair. All right, I'm recording this with my face, Lexi and Chloe and Gavin. He hurt his shoulder. All right, so I have to say that again, Scott. Scott lost his 2 times in a row, highest test grade, 3rd time's not a charm for Scott. The highest test grade this time was Finn.
What a surprise.
All out, Finn.
So, and it was a solid A, Finn. Good deal. I just have to throw this out, though, just because the next highest test grade was between, they'd tied for second highest test grade would be Alex and Nora. Alex, I almost took an extra 5 points off of yours for trying to correct my grammar. I certainly don't mind when people correct my grammar, but you need to be right when you correct it.
Subconsciously, it helps me think I don't always have to do it.
Yeah, immigrants was not. Wait. Let me see what we got. Let me just read it out loud. Where'd it go? I just got to do this. I can't, Alex. I can't let you have too much praise, right? I can't like.
I don't expect any praise.
You should.
Probably take a nap.
You should, because you did very well. Illegal immigration was hurting America, or illegal immigration were hurting America.
Did I go work?
You wrote were.
Oh.
Yeah. I actually went and asked Mrs. Murdoch just to make sure like that wasn't some weird and
I think I just read it immigrants.
yeah. That question, please make sure you pay attention to the accept questions. That one was one that was missed a lot. It was the one that started with the chart. A nativist who was concerned over the increases in immigration shown above would likely make all of the following arguments accept. And most all of you did not pick the right one. Alex, you were too concerned about correcting my grammar to pick the right one, because that is the right one, that illegal immigration was hurting America. Please make sure you look at that accept. And I feel really bad when all of you like told me what a nativist was, like they hate immigrants, and then you got to find the one that is not true. Next, throwing out some praise shade. I'm going to start calling it that. Only person that got even close to answering Minanich was Walker. You got 4 points because you said he was an enlightened philosopher, so I couldn't give you all the way, but you said an enlightened philosopher who supported conservative ideals and against I can't remember what you said, radical left, I think, what you said. So you got 4. Logan got 2 points because he put him in kind of the right place. Some of you didn't even try, but so my non-AP kids, 1 person got it. So you didn't lose any bonus points.
Is that someone in the book?
Yes, no, it was from last year. He's very important. He has a whole chapter called The Age of Metternich. Like, it's not just some random dude. It's a really important dude. He's very important. All right, so our next week is going to look like this. Please don't forget you have a big project due next Tuesday. Make sure you get that done. We have a really, really short chapter, the Manifest Destiny. It's only 7 pages of notes, front and back. It's not a lot, but it's significant because what Manifest Destiny does is it moves slavery. So our history is going to radically change because slavery is now going to start to move. And as it starts to move and we get new states, we come back to the question, free state or slave state, which is essentially going to send us into the Civil War. So as far as pacing and timing wise, we should be killing Abraham Lincoln at this point. We're not. We're 2 chapters away from killing Lincoln, which makes me a little nervous, especially when I know that next semester you guys are out of my class a lot for testing, I-STEP testing, PSAT again, SAT again. So we're going to have to really think about, and I'm really going to have to think about a lot of timing and pacing wise. And one of the biggest reasons that we're not killing Lincoln again is the same reasons, we're out of class so, and I'm not talking about the Wednesdays. I'm talking about testing and everybody go down to the cafeteria. And so I got to really rethink our next semester, and it might require some more like taped lectures more than just Wednesday that you have to listen to so we can stay caught up. And we are, I think, because we have been in class, we are at an advantage than most of the people in around the country, because they're still advocating for not having the full exam because they don't get to see their kids full time like we do. They're virtual or some kind of hybrid or whatever. So we are in a really good spot. Again, what that helps us for is the AP scores are based on a bell curve. So it's not like a cutoff. They don't say you have to get 20 questions right. It's a bell curve. So they draw a curve and they move 11% to 15% in that 5, and then 20% in that 4, then a big chunk in that 3, and they just put that bell curve. So it's in our advantage that a lot of these kids are not in person and struggling and not at the place where we are. So I don't like to take advantage of, I know it's not nice to do that, but when I look at, because on our AP communities, you know, all the teachers, and some of them are just like, they're almost like, I can't even teach like this. I can't do it. So we're in a good spot, even though we're not in a good spot. And poor President Lincoln is still alive. But we will get him dead as soon as we get back from, yeah, we'll get him dead as soon as we get back from, so calendar first.
I understand it. I just refuse.
What?
I understand it. I just refuse to acknowledge.
See, right. I get it. No one paper this time, just cheat sheet. Please make sure that you're working on these cheat sheets. Yeah. Especially the contextualization. That's the really important part. Is making sure. So at this point, you either need to be making me a list, which is more than one thing, or you need to be writing a paragraph of contextualization. That is what's really important. Notes. Oh, this copy machine hates me. Let's see how.
Hey, Miss Norris, have you read grade 13 yet?
Have you what?
Have you read 13 yet? Do you think I got this out of the box?
Yeah, that was when I was fast and furious grading and
Okay.
was just moving.
Okay.
That's what Wednesday is like in here. It is like fast, furious. Is that the name of that movie? That's me. The Fast and Furious with grading. If I don't make wrecks, I just win. I've never seen those movies before. I don't know what they're about. I don't know what they're about. I don't like movies with car wrecks. I just think that's ridiculous. I just sit there and overanalyze, like, your car could never make that move.
I don't know if you guys get your new pink clothes. I just would. I don't make wrecks. I just
Yeah,
I can't have those.
yeah. We're just by myself.
They're all gone.
Yeah, no, the other day, I bought one of them all when it came home and she wanted to buy some. I was like, oh yeah, you need to also put $1 in there for me. Well, I just like,
I just throw
Like you're already putting it on. Yes.
Yeah, we got him. What I would do is for somebody that put things back in the
You guys are fun. You're just like not gonna be fun.
No, I do that. I'm gonna do. I have to watch them all at the same
Oh,
time.
you said that like.
So when I grade them,
And you said,
when I grade them, I watch them all at the same time. So that's what tomorrow is. I shut my door.
oh boy. I feel loaded for lunch.
Okay. Everybody got homework?
So Rick.
Okay.
Walker, you're so creative.
Mine's my face and it's broken.
All right. So, my friends, this is again a relatively short chapter, chapter 17. It's been a long time since we only have done one chapter. I think the last time we did it was Jackson. But what is important about this chapter is the movement across the United States. We're going to have a war. We're going to look a little deeper into Texas, and then we're going to have the Mexican-American War. We're going to meet Abraham Lincoln for a little bit in this chapter before we move to our next sets of chapter about slavery and then eventually Civil War. Again, sadly, for many of you, because we don't have questions about wars, we don't spend a lot of time actively discussing the Civil War because there's no questions about the Civil War. We look at advantages, disadvantages, why in the world the crazy South thought they would win, why crazy people in the South still think they won. Again, I think I told you I got sent to the office 3 times. 3 times in my whole life. All 3 times were the same class by my same teacher, who was the infamous coach teaching U.S. history. His name was Branch Pope. He had a Branch Pope. He was a big dude. And he would send me to the office. Miss Peyton, take yourself to the office. Because he refused to use the correct terminology for the Civil War and called it war between the states. I'm like, no, not war between the states, because you guys seceded and you weren't part. You were treasonous. It got me in a lot of trouble with all of my family members, many of them. And just, again, so that you understand, that, like, my granny, it was always the war between the states. I could never tell her, Granny, it wasn't war between the states because North Carolina seceded from the Union. They were not part of the states. Anyway, so that's what we're looking at. That's what will be. And this chapter, again, is significant because we set up the final issues that Congress refuses to deal with in this manifest destiny and this push across the United States. The Missouri Compromise, the line that was drawn by the Missouri Compromise was pretty much to the north and the west, this line in stone, etched in stone. Kind of figure out, we already figured this out, people. Anything below that line, slavery can move to. Anything above it, not going to happen. And the problem will be these two territories, these two states, Nebraska and Kansas. But the immediate problem is going to be California. California will have their gold rush in 1849. And it is significant to also remember that the gold rush was not just a United States event, it was a global event. And people around the world are coming to California. And what happens is California very, very quickly meets the requirement for statehood. So we're going to have this kind of weird looking map for a long time because we don't have any states in the interior. And then we're going to start getting states on the coast, which is, again, part of this weird manifest destiny thing. So when California applies for statehood, in their constitution, their state constitution, it is established that California is a free state. And again, now we have a problem. In 1850, how are we going to admit another free state and upset that balance of power? So this whole chapter, called Manifest Destiny, is about the balance of power in regards to slavery and the inability for elected officials that were chosen to represent not only their constituents but their state to fix it and to acknowledge that this has got to be a problem that we have to look at and we have to fix. So Manifest Destiny begins in the 1840s. This little quick chapter is going to take us almost right up to 1860. So even though it's short, it is quite a bit of information. So our president is John Tyler. So we're getting to a 20-year time period where most of these presidents are unknown. John Tyler, Taylor, Buchanan, Pierce, Polk, all of those, no-name presidents. Then we're going to have a really important president, Lincoln, then Johnson, and then Grant, and then we're going to go through a whole nother list of no-name presidents. Garfield, Arthur, my favorite Grover Cleveland, who sounds like he should be on Sesame Street and not a president. So we have to figure out why that happens and what those presidents lacked to, again, accelerate the issues and solve the problems. So in 1840, William Henry Harrison, and John Tyler will be elected president, and Harrison's going to die of pneumonia within 4 weeks. That's our guy that speaks too long out in the cold without his coat, wanting to project this image of strong male, I'm not cold. Mr. O'Brien does it every day. Do you guys know he doesn't wear a coat? I don't understand. I'm just walking. You're going to be sick. And so he becomes the one of our first presidents that's going to die in office. I think he's the second one, actually. And then Vice President Tyler becomes the president. And when that happens, everything that Webster and Clay had planned to pass as a Whig controlled Congress is going to fail because Harrison was a Whig, Tyler was a Democrat. And so that's going to be an issue. On 1B, Tyler was a Jacksonian in philosophy, but did not like Jackson personally. And he openly opposed the Whigs party again for Henry Clay. And this, again, is going to be pretty much the last big hurrah of Henry Clay in this issue. Vetoed more bills than any single-term president in U.S. history. So again, John Tyler is going to be a single-term president, and that, again, usually says a lot about the president's term. A one-term president really sends a message that something about this guy the American public didn't like, and quickly voted him out the next time that he ran for office. He ended the independent treasury system. Again, that was something that was put in place to protect the financial institution of the United States. Tyler vetoed a bill for the creation of a third national bank, and Tyler expelled from his party by a congressional caucus of Whigs. That is something that's difficult to have happen. And I don't know that it's something that's easily understood. if you're a politician, you belong to that caucus, you belong to the party's caucus, you can be kicked out. They can tell you, you can no longer be a Republican, you can no longer be a Democrat, you can no longer be a Whig. And for the president of the United States to be kicked out of his own party is fairly significant. They're going to try to impeach him, but they cannot get enough of support for that. And this is again one of the reasons why Tyler is one of those no-name presidents. We continue to have some conflict with England. Again, it hasn't gone all the way away even after the War of 1812. We don't really need to know any of those except down to the bottom of C with Maine. And we're having a boundary dispute. So British desired to build a road connecting Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. And this road is going to go through disputed territory. Disputed territory means more than one nation claims that territory. And it happens more frequently than I think people think. And it's usually on every continent. There's some place and part of the world that's in dispute between Pakistan and India. It's Kashmir, both claiming Kashmir. And so this road is going through northern Maine, of which the United States says that stuff belongs to us. Great Britain says, nope, it belongs to us. And we have this really kind of weird lumberjack war. The Aroostook War is lumberjacks, real like lumberjacks. Canadian lumberjacks entered the river to claim the land. They're confronted by the Maine militia. Thankfully, it's a bloodless conflict. A bunch of lumberjacks and a bunch of militia, both claiming that part of land. And what happens, and this is the significance of this, is we finally are able to diplomatically solve issues that somehow keep us on the good side of the board. British diplomat Lord Ashburn negotiated with Secretary of State Daniel Webster. And if you flip the page on the top of page 2, this Webster-Ashburn Treaty pops up a lot on the AP exam, which is why it's highlighted, because there's quite a few things that are going to happen as a result of it. U.S. retains over half of the territory, while Britain got Halifax and Quebec route. So the British get their route, they get their road, but we get half of the territory. British are going to express regret for the destruction of the Caroline ship, promise to avoid interference in freeing slaves, because that's what they're trying to do. Both agreed to cooperate in patrolling the African coast to prevent smuggling. And then most importantly is E and F. We get Minnesota, which is going to be really important because we're going to have lots of iron ore there. And F is what you get asked about. F is the significance of improved U.S.-British relations. It takes until 1840 for us to move to this place where Great Britain becomes one of our loyal, long-standing allies. And it starts, which is why you need to know it, with this goofy lumberjack war, so that we can change the way that we deal with Great Britain. And again, will be one of our longest lasting allies, which makes for pretty strange allies in the sense that they were our colonial oppressors and all of those things. So that leads us to this thing called manifest destiny. Millions of Americans in the 1840s and 50s believed that God chose America. That is really an important part of this conversation, because this idea that it is a God-given right to spread across America, it is done without regard for who's already there. And this will be our second round of how do we deal with Native Americans. Round number 1 being John Smith, Puritans, Pilgrims, that group. And now Native Americans have all been pushed into the interior, and now we want to go there. And so this begins a buildup to how this territory is dealt with, because it is not empty land. That's the assumption that is given. It's empty. Let's just spread across. And what's going to happen is it's going to lead to a lot of very difficult armed conflict. Felt mission was to spread democratic institutions from sea to shining sea. And that becomes that idea of manifest destiny, sea to shining sea. And it's in songs even. Thomas Hart Benton is a proponent of expansion, free land, and internal improvements. And the phrase manifest destiny is given to us again by a newspaper writer. We're going to have lots of these in this century, these things given to us by newspaper writers. Go west, young man. Go in and reinvent yourself. And the movement, again, is going to become conflict with those Indians that we already moved in the 1830s. All right, so we're going to stop there for today. Anybody have questions before we stop?